I'll go around and stuff. Today is going to be about this particular part. And what is this? This is known as a APIM, which sets into a Ford Edge. This is a 2011, and this particular module sets on the back of the touchscreen that allows the screen to display all of its functions. This is the device. It plugs into the back, right here, into the back of the display in your car. And down here is a big giant 50-some pin connector. And here is the USB port that is used, that goes into the center console for USB drive, and also the SD card that has nav on it. This is a nav capable module. Okay, and I'll see if I can get close enough to show you. That shows the actual part number. It shows it was made in Mexico, and the date code is June 11th, 2011. And down there is the Bluetooth MAC address for Bluetooth. That's built into this. The Wi-Fi MAC address, you see those down there? Yeah. And that's the model number, and that's the date code. And on this side, there really isn't a whole lot, except, let's see, scrap if drop, made in Mexico, 6/11/11. There's the part number again. And very clearly says it dropped to trash it. Okay. If you have, in my particular case, the screen went dead. The touch screen allows you to do navigation, cabin air, cell phone, and media player are all on the Sync 2 that I have in my Ford Edge. It doesn't say that on here anywhere, but this is a Sync 2 module. There are Sync 3s, and now I think there are even Sync 4s that probably are very similar to this in construction. But if you're having trouble with your display, okay, this is the most likely candidate. If you've already tried pulling the fuse out to reset it, in my case that was fuse 29, which is inside the cabin, not out in the car. Okay, it's inside the cabin on the left hand, on the driver's side, against the sidewall. You'll have to find that and pull number 29 fuse, or look in your manual and see what fuse it is. And this is for audio, video, I think that's what it's called. But it's known as the APIM, which is protocol something module, interface module. Okay, I have opened this one up, and I'll give you a view of the inside. That's the front side of it. See the big connector in the middle. And then this comes out. Here is the back side. And one of the things that you'll notice on this, which actually I was kind of surprised to find, but I didn't think about it much, is we have lots of large capacitors here. And you go, well, I'm starting off with 12 volt DC. Why would I need a lot of those? It's unclear to me if the audio amplifier for the car is on this module or not on this particular unit. That may explain the large capacitors. Car would be electrically noisy environment, and there probably would be some capacitors setting on the 12-volt line to get out any noise that gets created by the ignition or whatever electrical going on in there. And so those might be part of this circuit, is to take some noise off the 12-volt line. You don't want that in the logic here. And again, it may be part of the audio that is on this board. I don't see what I would call a computer chip, a CPU. There usually would have heat sink on it if it were such a device. And I don't see anything like that on here. This is, I think, a non-computer based board with fixed programming, some amount of memory that allows you to change settings and store them, but not a real, if you will, general purpose computer. I don't believe I see any chip on here that meets that criteria. And again, part of my criteria for that is that I don't see any heatsink on it. Now, one of the things you do notice here in the case is at the top, you've got this case has been molded to allow heat to dissipate right here. And on the inside, underneath of that, you got this material, which I assume is like heat sink material, a rubbery heated silicon, transfers heat. So this guy sets, I'll get this in here. So up here, these chips at the top here, right there where my hands are, those chips are pressed against the heat sink material, and if anything gets hot, it's those chips, and one of those is probably a graphics chip. But there is no actual heat sink attached to it, nor thermal conductive paste or anything like that. So it just sits in there, and the idea is that heat will be dissipated out to these fins here. Okay. That's the board. It could go bad for a variety of reasons. In my case, it's intermittent. Sometimes the display comes on, sometimes it doesn't. I've sort of tracked it down to being a heat problem, in that if I let the car sit out in the sun for a long time, it's more likely to happen than if it's colder. That could be either a capacitor problem. On this particular case, I don't see any capacitors having bulged tops, which is usually an indication of fault. And looking at this board, I see no signs of trauma, nothing burnt. I don't see any lifted leads on it. But any board like this has very tiny solder connections all over it. And the car interior is a pretty wide-ranging thermal environment. It can go below 0 in the car, and it can get to like 140 in the summer in the car. And all this stuff, metal, whatever, expands and contracts. And so over time, one of these leads may pull away from the board enough that it gives me this intermittent sort of operation. I saw some videos where somebody was looking at the resistor packs and resoldering those down, and I do see some resistor packs right there. I haven't looked at them in detail. They talked about just resoldering those things, which is not easy to do, especially on small circuitry. But anyway, I don't know if there's a repair service for these things or not. There should be. I've looked. You can't apparently just buy a replacement board. You have to buy the whole assembly, and brand new, these are like $900, and putting it into your car. If you were to go to the Ford dealership, I think it's around $1,500 or so to have it installed, which is crazy to me. There are videos on the web on how to do it. I have done it. I will be posting add-on to this. I'm just trying to get this piece back in here. It sits in the corner here. Let's see. I have done it, and put it back in here first. And then this gets put on the corner, or I'll leave the corner on for now, and just put the lid back on it. And this top, again, all put together except for the corner. There are 2 torque screws that hold that board in place, and they're right here where my fingers are. There's only 2 torque screws right in the center that holds on place, and you can see because of these tabs, there's only one way this module will sit into the back of the display that's in your front of your car. Okay, it is a do-it-yourself if you're careful. It's not a complex thing. There are several videos on YouTube about how to change this, and I did it that way, but I will be adding to this to say things to watch out for. I have it in. It's currently working. Seems to be fine. I don't know if it has a heat-cold issue or not. I haven't gone through that cycle yet. But one of the things that actually happened, and I don't know yet why, is in the console, there is, in my particular case, there are lighted LED rings around the cup holders. Those are fine. But there was also an LED that's associated with the shifting, which shows you, it lights up which gear you're in. And for some reason, when I looked down and I was working on things, I saw that little LED like hanging out. I'm not sure where it goes. I haven't been able to track that down. And apparently taking that whole console up and off the shifter lever is not as straightforward as some people want you to believe it is. So I will deal with that subsequently and show you where to be careful when you try to do it yourself. The bulk of it is easy. The only problem I had was with the console around the shifter and getting the front bezel off of the whole mass column that had to do with the volume, and then that face that goes over the display. That's the only problem I really had. I have it all back together. The other problem I did have, which I'll talk about, was getting this LED connector out. The big one came out easy enough. I just unhooked it and pulled it over and lifted it right out. No problem at all. This is where, this has obviously two USB ports on it. My car is only equipped with one, and it uses this black one. There's only one cable there. And I had trouble getting it out of there, and looking at the latching mechanism, I tried to do it properly. And I wound up breaking little tabs that are off on the USB cable itself. And I suspect, like a lot of plastic, it's just gotten brittle from the heat over time. I have a 2011, so it's 2024. That's, what, 13 years old. And plastic does tend to get brittle over time. But when I pushed it back in the new one, it seated, I thought, real well. It's a deep socket, and one of the things you will notice is they're using those little tiny USBs down here. I don't know why they did that. I mean, sure, board space, but they could have used a regular size. Why they went to the little ones, I don't know. Anyway, when I pushed the USB cable back in, it latched pretty well. I don't think it's could come out. I had trouble getting it out. I could not seem to get it out, no matter how I tried to push things, pull things, whatever. Again, the big one came easy. So that's the story on this. I will now add to it about what to be careful when you try to do the swap out yourself. What do I do with this one? I don't know. It intermittently works. I haven't seen, I don't know if there's a repair business around or who could actually connect this up in some way to properly test it. I don't know. I have seen rebuilt of these. The other thing I need to point out, I had a BMW for a long time, an X5, and first time I ran across it, but various modules like this and other things were what was called coded. And they had a VIN number. The VIN number of your car was coded into that module. So if you were to take off a module and put a new module on, and it was a coded module, it wouldn't work unless it got programmed. So you'd wind up having to take it to a dealership, and he would have to program that VIN number into that module and charge you whatever it was. Now, when I bought my replacement for this, I provided him with the VIN number of the car, and he programmed it in. So when I got the module, all I had to do was install it. But that's something else I'm highlighting to you. You have to know which one of these you have. Sync 2, Sync 3, Sync 4. You also have to know whether it supports navigation or not. Not all of these do. They look very similar, but some support nav, some don't. In my case, navigation is SD card that you plug in. Apparently in later versions, SD is not the navigation. It's not a card, some sort of download or something else. But these have to be programmed and the VIN number of your car put into it. So you can't just buy one of these off of eBay or someplace else and put it in and expect it to work. So you need to buy one that includes VIN programming. And once they do it and ship it to you, it should then just take the old one out, put the new one in, and you should be off. And that's what I did, and it appears to be fine. The only thing I haven't tested so far is Bluetooth, and that's the next up. But GPS came alive. The audio functions are all there. Everything works fine. A real test is, you know, for first heat cycle. When it gets to be 140, I set it out in the sun for 5 days or something, and then see if it'll fire up again, because I may have a similar problem. The other issue is, and it's kind of a strange issue, you know, I've discovered in the past that connections can be a problem over time. Here's a 50-some pin connector, and here's a little teeny tiny, you saw it, USB connector down in there. Nobody uses gold on these pins. They don't do that. They get cheap and they use steel or whatever, aluminum, whatever it is. And you do develop some corrosion on the pins, you would think, but it's very low voltage. You're only talking 12 volts to start with. It's not high, and the lower the voltage, the more a pin resistance impacts connectivity. So from one perspective, it could be nothing more than one or more of the connectors needed to be pulled out and replaced, or perhaps even sprayed with a little contact cleaner. And they do make it. I discovered this on a Ford Taurus years ago. Every electrical connection wanted to corrode, and it didn't make good connections, so you had intermittent problems. That may have been my problem with this one. I don't know. It's a hassle to take in and out, so it's not like something you want to be doing over and over again. I put one I bought into the car. It appears to be working. I'm going to hold on to this one. I did look inside. There isn't anything in there apparently I can deal with. I don't see anything that needs, and I don't have a diagram, and I don't have the proper equipment to test it. So that's enough. This is part one, and this has to do with a 2011 Ford Edge and ours is special whatever. It's a full special sport bottle or something like that. But this did support navigation. Again, Sync 2 with nav. You can buy, there are some Sync 2s, no nav. There are Sync 3s. Apparently there is some way now to replace a Sync 2 with a Sync 3 module. I haven't explored it. I didn't want to deal with that, but you can do that. I don't know that Ford is providing updates anymore to the Sync 2s. In fact, I read the other day that the navigation SD card for 2024 will be the last navigation SD card that Ford produces. Now, there may be other people who pick up the slack. I've been using, I think it's version 10 of SD card nav, and I think they're up to version 15 now. So I might, if I confirm my new one works okay, I might upgrade to the current year at least, because if that's the last year, they don't have to run me until I get rid of the car. This is the first major thing I've had to do to the car. Other than changing oil, and I don't remember anything else major, tires of course. But as for any component in the car, this is the first major problem I've run across. And it came on slowly. It happened once, then it happened again, then it happened a third time. And reflecting upon it, every time it had been sitting out in the sun. The car is normally garaged, kept in a reasonably constant sort of environment. But it's related to heat. I do know that whatever was wrong with this was related to a thermal heating and cooling, over and over again, and something got impacted. If not the connectors, then one or more of the chips inside or the solder connections. This is part one. Maybe this will be a separate part, and I'll show you my installation issues in part two. So this is 2011 Ford Edge, the APIM module, and how I have replaced it. That's enough for today. Today's the 13th of July 2024.